हेलो दोस्तों, कैसे हैं आप लोग। सो वंस अगेन वेलकम टू माय चैनल निर्मल टेक्निकल। सो बहुत दिनों के बाद मैं आज अपना नया सेशन लेके आया हूँ ऑन क्यूबरनेटीज। तो होपफुली आप सभी लोग अच्छे होंगे। सो बिफोर स्टार्टिंग दिस सेशन, प्लीज लाइक दिस वीडियो एंड सब्सक्राइब माय चैनल निर्मल टेक्निकल। आशा करता हूँ कि आप लोगों को आप हमारे सेशन की वीडियो से आप बहुत कुछ सीख रहे होंगे। So please like this video and subscribe my channel Nirmal Technical. Thank you all. So today this session agenda is about Kubernetes, of course, because Kubernetes is a very big topic and there are so many objects and so many features in Kubernetes. So today our live agenda is about Kubernetes namespace. Okay. So friends, as you can see, then one definition is there about Kubernetes. So I will give you some basic concept. I will try to provide a basic concept about namespace. Definition is there. Okay, okay. So what is a namespace in Kubernetes? So I will take example uh, to get a understand on Kubernetes namespace in easier way. So friends, namespace in Kubernetes, Uh, the definition is like it is a virtual cluster inside a cluster, Kubernetes cluster. As we know, guys, that Kubernetes is a setup of cluster. Kubernetes is a container orchestration or management tool. You know, when we install a mini cube, you see that it is a cluster. So Kubernetes work on a cluster environment. Cluster, what is cluster? So cluster is set of nodes. Node, it might be a VM, virtual machine, or your server like local machine. Even also it might be a virtual VM and also a cloud server. If we talk about cloud servers, so in AWS, when you launch any virtual server in AWS cloud, so it is called EC2 instance. On your requirement, depends on your requirement, what operating system you want to use, Linux or Window or Mac. So, so now coming on our namespace. What is namespace in Kubernetes? So definition is there. Namespace is a virtual cluster inside a Kubernetes cluster. So you know Kubernetes works in a cluster environment. So it is a virtual cluster. So taking example to give a basic concept about this Kubernetes namespace, I will try to provide a very good concept about this. So uh, let's say we have a PC, okay, our laptop and Window server, Window operating system, okay, and in D drive we don't have any folder, okay. So if you if you will place your documents, your file, your data, everything in D drive. So whenever you want to find, you will go in that D drive and you will search whatever you want to see your document or technical document or data or file, all of the things what you have placed in that drive. Okay, so here in this example, D drive is a cluster. Okay, I am trying to giving an example to get understand about namespace. So here in D drive, it is a cluster. D drive is a like a cluster by default, because you, if you want to save the data, you can save all of the data in their D drive. Even also you can save your data on your desktop, on your C drive. But I'm just giving an example to get understand. Okay, but think, if you have the data, some data which is related to the technical documents, you have the data which is related to the some non-technical or any another field, or you can see there are uh, two three projects, like you have some data for related to project 1, you have the some data for which is related to project 2, or you have the some data which is related to project 3. Okay, so I am taking an example of there are three projects, and you have the different data but belongs to the different projects: project 1 data, project 2 data, project 3 data. And if you will place all of the data in particular D drive, no problem, you can save all of the data in D drive. But whenever you want to search according to your requirement, if you want to search the project 2 data, so it will not be a easier way to find out, because if there are more many data, more documents, more files, so you have to find, but it will not be easier way. Yeah, you can say somehow it will be difficult for you whenever you want to search those files or documents. So rather than saving all of the data in particular D drive, if you will create a folder in window, you can create a folder, just right click. So you will create a folder project 1, project 2 and project 3, and the particular files of project 1 you can save in project 1 folder, and particular files which is related to project 2 folder, so you can save all of the files or documents in project 2 folder. In similar way, uh, the files or documents which are related to project 3, you can save all those documents or files in that particular folder 3 name, which name is project 3. And whenever you require in future, whenever you requirement, you want to see the project 3 data, so you do not need to touch project 1 or project 2. You will open that project 3 folder, and whenever you see all of the documents or files in project 3 folder. So D drive is a namespace which is default. Okay, D drive is a default, and you have specified project 1, project 2, project 3. So here in this example, D drive is a cluster. Okay, D drive is a cluster, and project 1 folder, project 2 folder and project 3 folder, all of these folders are called like namespace. Okay, previously I said D drive is a default namespace. Sorry to say that. D drive in this example, D drive in your PC, our PC, is a cluster, and the folder name is project 1, project 2, project 3. All of the folders are namespace. So somehow this is the example for one. Now, what is the use of namespace in Kubernetes? So in Kubernetes cluster, let's say there are in real environment, when it is working in industrial area in the actual environment, when the team is working in that Kubernetes. So let's say there are 2 or 3 team members. Okay, they are working on different project, but on a same Kubernetes cluster. So in that situation, it is requirement of create a different namespace. Okay, so let's say there are 3 team members: team A, team B, team C. So what will they? Team A will create a namespace, uh, team A namespace. Team B will create a different namespace, team B, or either they can put any name. And team C will create a namespace, team C are different to another any namespace. When those guys from the team particular want to work on that Kubernetes cluster, so they can work in each individual their namespace. Like team A can work in team A namespace, team B can work in team B namespace, team C can work in their namespace, team C. They now, I think you guys have some understanding about namespace. I will, okay, I'm taking another example. Let's say in college, there are particular a principal room. Okay, there are particular a principal room. It's particular one principal room in that college, and thousands of students come to the college, so they can connect with the principal particular one room. But the students, let's say there is a technical college. Okay, so those are the students which belongs to the electronics branch. So there will be there will particular faculty of electronics. The students which belongs to the CS branch, so there will be a faculty of CS branch, and some students belongs to the chemical branch. So there will be particular faculty of chemical branch. So in this example, principal room is a default namespace. Okay, and the students belong to the different branches. For the study, they have to go in that particular classroom. Like for chemical, so those students which belong to the chemical branch, they will attend the class in their particular chemical branch class. So that's why the definition is namespace as a Kubernetes cluster, virtual cluster inside your Kubernetes cluster. Oh, so whenever you create a cluster in Kubernetes, so by default there will be uh, four namespace. First one is default. Second one is you can see here default. Second one is kube system, and third is kube public, and fourth is kube leads. Okay, I did not mention that. I forgot to that. Okay, so kube system is it is used for Kubernetes components and should be avoided. And kube public it is used for public resources, not recommended for use by users. So guys, I think hopefully you have you have a overview in your concept of what is the namespace in Kubernetes cluster. So I already share with you taking two examples like your D drive. It is a cluster and you can create a folders, project 1, project 2, project 3. So here project 1, project 2, project 3 are namespace. In college, there are faculties of other branches, electronics, computer science, and chemical. So these faculties will be a namespace, and default namespace will be a principal room. So this is the just example to get understand about namespace. So whenever you create a cluster in Kubernetes, so by default a default namespace is created automatically. And whenever run the command kubectl, create an object. So by default, you do not need to mention that default namespace. All of the objects like pod, replica set, replication controller will create a with default namespace. We do not need to define that these objects should be created with default namespace, because it is the feature of Kubernetes that default namespace is created automatically when you create a cluster in setup cluster when you create a cluster setup in Kubernetes. So this is This is the why. This is uh, definition is there. Add its name implies this is the namespace that is referenced by default for every Kubernetes command and where every Kubernetes resources is located by default. So when you create or when you located any Kubernetes resource, so here Kubernetes resource that means pod, replication controller, replica set, yeah, you can say Kubernetes resource or Kubernetes objects. Okay, so it will these objects will be created in by default namespace. Okay, and Kubernetes namespace is definition is there. Namespace as a virtual cluster inside your Kubernetes cluster. As I told you, you can have multiple namespaces inside a single Kubernetes cluster, and they are all logically isolated from each other. This is a very important point. They are all logically isolated. That means if two or three team members in real environment where they are working in different namespace, so all of these namespaces are isolated to each other because of the data what data you can say the application which are running in different namespace will not to disturb or will not to create a problem for each other because these namespaces are isolated to each other. This is the main feature. This is the main benefit of that namespace. That different team can work in a single cluster, same cluster, but using a different namespace. So they will create a first namespace, then they will work in separate namespace. The team, like team A, team B, team C. So team A work will in namespace A, team B will work in namespace B, team C will work in namespace C, and all of the namespaces are to isolated each other. So, friends, I think you have the understanding about the namespace. Uh, See this video two time, three time. It will be more understanding. It will be more provide a clearance for you if you see two or three times, so you can understand a namespace in Kubernetes. So now moving on our lab. So I have given a brief about namespace in Kubernetes. Now moving on lab, I will show you in practical. Okay. So dear friends, actually I have already installed Minikube because you know guys, Minikube takes time approximately 25 to install. So I have already installed a Minikube on VM. So further, I will show you. I have written some commands here. So this command kubectl get nodes to see the node, kubectl get ports, to see the port in cluster, kubectl get ports hyphen namespace equal to default. So here I will moving on lab. Before I will tell you that kubectl get ports and kubectl get ports hyphen namespace equal to default. The output of both command will be same. As I earlier told you that when you fire this command, so automatically this command means kubectl get ports. It will show you the ports which are already created in default namespace. You don't need to mention this adding this default. It will automatically show you in the default namespace the object which you have created. Okay, until that you will not create a new object. Sorry, until that you will not create a new namespace. If you do not create any new namespace in your cluster, minikube cluster or any other cluster, okay, kubedium, that is. So till that time when you fire this command kubectl get pods or kubectl get object. It is not only for pod. kubectl get replication controller, kubectl get replication set. So all of the object will show in by default namespace. I think you are getting, my friends, what I'm trying to tell you, what I'm trying to share with you. You can also see how many namespaces are running on your cluster kubectl. So minikube cluster. So kubectl get namespace. It will see the output of this command will be the namespace which are running in active in actually cluster. For creation of new namespace, so this is the command kubectl create namespace, then namespace name, test namespace. I just mention here test namespace. You can put any name, whatever you want. Okay. Then I will create a pod. This is the lab. This is the lab command which I will fire. So before firing these commands, I am giving the this command's output and what is the meaning of this command. Okay. So kubectl, now I'm creating a new namespace. So kubectl create namespace and then namespace name. So test namespace. So now one namespace which is test namespace name will create. Then will see kubectl run. No, no, I will not see. Actually, kubectl run test pod hyphen image nginx. So I am going to create a new pod which is name is test pod on nginx image. So this test pod will be created. kubectl run test pod 1 hyphen image nginx. Now what is the difference between these two commands? So there are two difference. First, the pod name is test pod. Here the pod name is test pod 1. And secondly, this pod will be created in default namespace, but in this command, test pod will be test pod 1 will be created in namespace is test namespace. Okay. Now moving on, next command curl hyphen https slash baby. Okay, actually I will tell you in later. Firstly, let me share with you these commands. Output, what is the role of these commands? Okay, so our mini cube cluster is already ready. You can see here. So I will fire first command. So kubectl get nodes. Kubectl get nodes. You can see our mini cube is ready. Control plane 3 hours 59 minutes. Actually, I already installed this mini cube on my virtual machine Ubuntu server. Okay. So I will see how many ports are running currently in this cluster. So you can see kubectl get ports. Kubectl. Yes. Actually, no, I will tell you why. What is the difference this command and this command? Guys, can you tell me? But you cannot tell me because this is a not live video. But you can mention in my uh, comment box. Actually, you can see that cage in caps and here cage in small because kubectl always run is small letter, not a capital letter. That's why this command was not successfully run. Okay. So you can see when I fire this command kubectl get nodes, what is showing here, what is the output here? No resource found in default namespace. Now I think you guys can understand what I told you earlier that when kubectl, when a cluster setup is done, when in minikube or any another kubeadm cluster, so by default there's a namespace, default namespace. Okay, I will show you the how many namespaces are right now in this cluster. So okay, so you can see when I fire this command kubectl get ports, it's here, it's showing here no resource found because till now I have not created any port in this cluster. That's why it's showing here no resource found in default namespace. Okay, so if you fire this command kubectl again kcaps, okay, wait, kubectl get ports hyphen namespace namespace default. So again it is showing here no resource found in default namespace. So the output of this command and output of this command are similar, are same. There is no any different, because I told you if you have not created any namespace in cluster, so by default there are four namespaces are created by default when cluster setup is done. Okay, so if you not created any namespace, that time, till that time, whenever you create any object, so it will be created by default in default namespace. That's why if you fire this command kubectl get ports, either kubectl get ports hyphen hyphen namespace equal to default, sorry, the output of both commands will be the same. Okay, kubectl get namespace. So you can see there are four namespace in kubectl and cluster: default, kube node leash, kube public, kube system. So I default. So this is default namespace for all the objects what you will create. Till I again telling you, I'm again telling you guys, until if you uh, set a new namespace within your object. Friends, hello friends, might be actually for some time the connection or disconnected my Wi-Fi router, some problem triggered. Okay, so I'm back again. Actually, the connection was interrupted. So where I was? Okay, so I will show you the default namespace when cluster is created on Kubernetes. So kubectl get namespace. So these are the default namespace when cluster setup is done. So do not confuse with what I'm when I'm saying default namespace. Default namespace are these are the default namespace which are created automatically when cluster setup is done. But our default namespace is actually the name of particular is namespace is default, and other names are different cube node lease, cube public, cube system. So here I have written some definition on that. So default, as its name implies, this is the namespace that is referenced by default for every Kubernetes command, and where every Kubernetes resource is located by default until new namespaces are created, as I told you. Okay. The entire cluster resides in default. Secondly, kube system. So it is used for Kubernetes component and should be avoided. And third one is kube public. So used for public resources, not recommended for use by others users. Sorry. So actually, our main uh, target, you can say, uh, uh, main agenda about namespace about default. Okay, because here it is written like it should be avoided. It is not recommended for use because default is that only the namespace where we create any object. So all of the objects will be created in that default namespace. Okay, so now I will create a pod and I will show you this pod will be created in by default in default namespace. So let's say I will create this test pod. Again you can see case caps. So kubectl run, the port name is test port and image what I will use nginx image. So you can see the port test port is created. Okay. So kubectl get ports. You can see I have just created a pod test port which is successfully running and there is a one container inside this pod which is running. Okay. So I did not mention that namespace name, but it is showing here test pod. If I will fire the same command adding additional namespace name. So name space equal to default. Guess what will be the output? Same output. Because I told you clearly, I told you very clearly that if you fire the command kubectl get ports or kubectl get ports and default namespace, so the output will be same because default namespace that means the until you will not create a new namespace, all of the objects will be created in a default namespace. You do not need to mention whenever you create object, either whenever you find the object, you do not need to mention that particular default namespace. Now I will show you, I will create a new namespace, then see what happens. Okay, so kubectl create this command. Kubectl create namespace, a namespace name is test namespace. Okay, so you can see namespace test namespace created. So first I will verify either this namespace created or not. So kubectl get namespace. You can see this namespace is test namespace is successfully created. Either you can fire the same command very short, ns. The same command output will, the output will be the same, because namespace, either if you write namespace, or you can also write only ns. Okay, this is also namespace. So now if you will create a new pod, okay, if you create a new pod, so guess in which namespace the pod will be created. I will tell you, no worry. Until, yes, I have created a new namespace, test namespace, but until till now this namespace is active. Don't go, don't like go again. There is some problem with electricity, so I have some problem is running on my society. There is problem with electricity. That's why again disconnected this session. So sorry for that, friends. So I'm back again. So you can see kubectl get ns. So I have created new namespace, test namespace. Okay. So if I will create a new pod again, so guess that pod will be created in default namespace, this one or this one. See, till now that default namespace is active in cluster. Status is active, even this test namespace is also inactive, but of course till now in cluster the default namespace is active. So whenever we will create a name, any object, and without adding the namespace name, so automatically those objects will be created in this default namespace. Okay, but if you mention that particular namespace name, then those object will be created this test namespace. Let me show you, it will be more understand, it will be more clear for you. Okay, so kubectl um, get ports, you can see that a test port is running. Okay, if I will mention a test port 1, okay, I just change that port name test port 1, and let me show you in which namespace it will be created. As I told you, it is very clear concept. If I mention here that namespace name test namespace, then it this object test port 1 will be created in this namespace. If I will not mention here any namespace name, so by default this pod will be created in this default namespace. Let me show you. So kubectl get pods, you can see that test port 1 is created under default namespace. Okay, if you want to see, so here mention that name space equal to default. You can see it's taking some time to create a container. kubectl delete pod test pod 1. Okay, let me take another, let me take a different image. Okay, kubectl run test pod 1 image httpd apache server. What is happening? Kubectl pod describe pod test pod 1. Yes, you can see now the test pod 1 is successfully created and running. The container inside this pod is running, but image is different. That is a HTTPD, which is Apache server. Okay. So here you can see when I'm firing this command kubectl get ports, so it's showing here test pod 1, which is just created, but it is created under a default namespace. So if you want to see, so kubectl get ports hyphen namespace equal to default. Now I will create another pod, but that namespace test namespace. Okay, so how I can do it is simply kubectl run test pod. Let me take the name test pod 2, that is the pod name. Image is stdpd. Just I need to add the particular namespace name, so hyphen name space equal to test name space. You can see pod is created, which name is test pod 2. So kubectl get pods. Guys, guess why I'm not able to see the test pod 2 in under this command kubectl get pods. Guess, imagine. Of course, I will tell you what is the reason behind that. When I'm firing this command kubectl get pods, the only test port and test port 1 is showing here. Why I'm not able to see this test port 2? The reason behind it, because I told you till now the default namespace is default. Okay, I have created this test port 2 under the namespace test namespace, and I told you when you fire this command kubectl get ports, so it will show the output of this command kubectl get ports, which ports are already created are default namespace. That's why the reason when I'm firing this command test port 2 is not showing here, because the reason is that test port 2 is created that different namespace, which is a test namespace. Okay. So if you want to see that this test port too, so you have to add that namespace. So kubectl get ports, then hyphen hyphen name space equal to test namespace. Now you can see there test port 2. Now you can see only test port 2 is so test port 2 is showing here. Yes, of course, because you have created only one test port 2 under this namespace. These these ports are created in default namespace, and this test port 2 created is namespace test namespace. So when you fire this command, you can see that ports which are created under default namespace. When you fire this command, you can see the port which is created under the namespace test namespace which you have created. Whenever you said that test namespace name, that is a different. Whenever you create a namespace, you can set any name. Now, dear, one question might be come in your mind. If not, I will tell you. So let's say if I have created a new namespace, that's what I just created earlier, test namespace. So let's say if I need to see here is an example of only one test port two. In real environment, there are 40 ports. There are so many ports. There are so many objects. So each and every time, do I need to mention that particular namespace which I have created? No, you can do one more thing. In cluster kubectl get kubectl get a namespace, or you can simply just mention kubectl get ns. So here you can see till now default namespace is active. Again I'm telling you, don't go on this status, it is also inactive, but all of the objects, if you don't mention that namespace name, it will all of the objects will be created in default namespace. But if you using of one particular command, if you want if I will create another objects, but those objects should be created on this test namespace, and I or also you do not want to add that namespace name, it is possible. How? So now I will tell you what is the use of these commands. That's why I told you that time, I will share with you in later. So there is one kubens, kubens. That is one software, you can say key something. Exactly, I don't know. That's why I'm not sure surely. But kubens is somehow it is a software. What is the use of this command? What are use of this software? Using this software, you can say tool. Actually, you can say tool. You can switch your default namespace to the requirement, your required namespace. If let's say I created the namespace test namespace, if I want to switch in cluster active default namespace to this namespace, so yes, it is possible. How? I will show you. So first I actually already installed this package tools. So first I need to run this command kubens, kubens. So here you can see default in green state and it is active in this cluster. So you will create all the objects. So by default, they will be created in this namespace. So what I need to do, I want to active my namespace, what I have created in active state. So cube ns and that namespace name. So cube ns and this namespace I need to mention. You can see active namespace is test namespace. Now, if you will create any object and without a namespace name, now onwards, all of the objects, whatever you will create, those objects will create in this namespace, test namespace, not in default. I will share with you how. Okay. So again, if you will fire this command, you can see now green is test namespace. Let me tell you that, let me show you the example, one more example. Okay, so kubectl run, let's say the name of that pod name. Okay, I will put the pod name is Nirmal. My name is Nirmal. Okay, kubectl run name, kubectl run. Again, I'm telling you kubectl run. This is the pod name, then image. So image hyphen hyphen image equal to httpd Apache server. Guess this object, this pod will be created in default namespace or test namespace. Guys, tell me. Yes. Of course, now this object will be created in this namespace because I have already said this namespace is a default as a default in cluster. So kubectl get pods. I will not mention that this test namespace. In same way, I did not mention here when I created this object that namespace, but this is created this pod, this object created this namespace. So similar way, I will not mention here that particular namespace name because now this namespace working as a default in the cluster. You can see kubectl run Nirmal. This is the object name and this object is showing here Nirmal 53 seconds ago. So friends, hopefully you have got understand, you have overview about the namespace in Kubernetes, which is a very important topic. Okay, so again I'm saying you see one or two or three times, एक बार देखिए, दो बार देखिए, पहली बार नहीं समझ में आता है, दूसरी बार देखिए तो आपको एक ओवरव्यू समझ में आएगा नेम स्पेस क्या होता है, क्या इसका रोल होता है. ओके, अगेन आई एम विशिंग यू, if you learn something from my video, so please like this video and subscribe my channel Nirmal Technical. Thank you so much. Bye bye.